It has been quite a bit of time since Arcane Season 2 came out. The overall impact has been positive, people still talk about the show, and it has touched the hearts of many worldwide with its characters, stories, and even the music. Overall, I think Season 2 when it came out hit incredibly hard, and was another success for Riot as a series and branching out their world. However, like most things, with time comes introspection, and looking back has allowed me to notice flaws a lot more in this series, and let's just say it doesn't hold up when you dive deeply into them. So when it came to looking back at this show, I wanted to see how it stands as a whole. Because if you were to ask me which season is better, I would easily say Season 1. The pacing is better and the overall flow of the show is more consistent. But when it comes to the series as a whole, I've had this main feeling about where the story beats in Season 2. They aren't bad. In fact, they are all really good. But they don't get the proper time to shine. I've been wondering what a solution would be for this. I was thinking, well, maybe one extra episode in each act would have helped, allowing for extra breathing room for the character growth or a concept to unwrapped, and even have the battles and choreography take its time, so we wouldn't have to rush to the action as much. But after thinking about it now, I still think that wouldn't be enough for the story that this show wanted to tell. And instead, this show should have been 3 seasons. Think about it. Season 1 keeps things simple. Set up the world, introduce the characters, establish the conflict between the 2 cities. It's perfect, and we see the different characters reflect the cities. The division of Vi and Jinx, Caitlyn getting closer to one of them, the rising friendship with Jace and Victor that subtly gets foreshadowed to fall in the future. And it all worked out pretty well. Every story is wrapped up well in Season 1, and leaves room for some new conflicts to arise in Season 2, even though I don't like the cliffhanger ending, and Silco dying was a little too soon for my liking. Still, despite it, the show overall had a lot of people talking about it and begging for more, wanting to know who would survive Jinx's ult, how the relationship between Kate and Vi would progress, and how the ultimate showdown would go with these 2 sisters. And well, there was more than just that to tell, and I don't think that they had enough time to do it, mainly because this show has such a lack of focus. So, let's go ahead and talk about that. Now, let's say that Act 1 in Season 2 hits. Much like Act 1 in Season 1, I have the least amount of problems with it, mainly just because this act is a continuation of everything that happened in Season 1. It takes place immediately after Jinx's ult, and we see the aftermath of it. The character moments are heightened, and the emotion from the characters we see are immensely felt, especially from Jace. His rampant panic and struggle to get Victor the help he needs. But it's also a gut-wrenching scene afterwards with seeing Caitlyn at her mom's funeral. I like the art choice here. Having the background characters and the environment in black and white while Caitlyn is still in full color is a great way to show how she's feeling. And this is where we get to the good of Season 2. I like Caitlyn as a character. Much more in Season 2 compared to how she was in Season 1. Frankly, she was the most uninteresting character in Season 1. She's meant to be the Piltover POV into Zaun and build that connection with Vi, but Vi honestly had more going for her in Season 1. Which is really ironic because of how this season goes. But now that Caitlyn lost her mom, she has a lot of growing to do. And this is elevated when the Zaun Knights attack the memorial. Also, I don't know about you guys, but after this, I stopped having sympathy for Zaun. When you have fuckers like this lady pulling shit like this out and unleashing creatures like that, you have gone too far. Yeah, I know Mbessa is manipulating them, but they still went through with it. What I'm trying to say is, Caitlyn did nothing wrong. But speaking of Mbessa, let me just say that I think the show does a phenomenal job at setting up Mbessa as a villain, and I would say that she's equal to Silco. She's rightfully intimidating in a physical sense, but also capable of being cunning and persuasive. It rightfully sets up her and Noxus as a threat. And then we have Jace, who is my favorite character this season. I have been a Jace fan since Season 1, and no one will ever make me hate him. People will be like, but Jake, he killed a child. Yeah, okay. 1, that kid was working for the mob, and 2, he was working in a factory. That kid had like 3 years tops. If anything, Jace just hastened the inevitable. But Jace has become so interesting to me. It's sad to see him go against everything he wanted Hextech to become. Now, after what happened at the memorial, he's pushed to make weapons, and also probably because of some convincing from Caitlyn as well. He's thrown everything out the door and developed specialized weapons for a whole crew of enforcers to assault the Undercity and arrest Jinx. So Caitlyn has gotten more interesting, and Jace is even better. Things are looking pretty good. But there's a character that isn't getting much, and that's Vi. Remember when I said that she was the main character in Season 1? She does not have that same feeling in Season 2. Now, she does have a little bit going for her. Caitlyn asks her to join the Enforcers, and she rightfully walks away from it, and hangs out with this drunk guy named Maurice, who is one of the most frustrating characters in this show, but we'll get to that in Act 2. The thing about Vi in this act is that it feels like the writers just have these boxes to tick. We need her to hesitate about wanting to be an Enforcer. But then Zaun has to do something bad again. She has to take responsibility for Jinx, says she'll take care of it, and we can get back to the big thumbnail scene that was in the trailer. These issues aren't as present in Act 1, but they are the beginning of a bigger problem that persists later in the season. Getting back to Zaun in the second episode, the show starts to regain its footing again. Jinx and Savika's dynamic is perfect. They both connect with the annoyances that Silco put them through, and realize that they both have a common goal: living up to the leader that they lost and cleaning up after the other idiots of the Undercity. They have a great aunt and niece dynamic that works way better than expected. And then we get introduced to Isha. And I would say that she's a walking, talking plot device, but she doesn't even fucking talk. In this act, all she does is get in between Jinx and Vi and makes the fight stop. Which is frustrating already, but we're gonna move past that. Now, Isha is not the only character that's frustrating in this. I mentioned Maurice, and he's gonna be in there too. Besides that, we have the plots moving forward pretty naturally, and that includes Jace and Victor. Victor's awakening from the pod is a very well-made scene that delightfully foreshadows what he will become in the future. And I love that the divide between the two of them is less about jealousy and more about the emotional side of things. It brings me back to Season 1, where they would refuse to take the easy route with the traditional cliches and tropes, to go a harder, more interesting route instead. And I would say that this is maintained for the most part with Jace and Victor's story, albeit not without its flaws. The setup for the foils of Jace and Victor was done very well, but I kinda wish they kept it to the side a little bit more. On the other hand, I think the opposite with Vi and Caitlyn. The kiss between Vi and Caitlyn in Episode 3 was well made, and I was happy to see it. But even when it came out, I wish it happened sooner, and that they were a little bit more established as an official couple earlier, because after they make out, they have a fight with Jinx and Savika, and then they immediately break up. And this breakup is hard to watch. A lesbian relationship ending in domestic abuse. What did the writers mean by this? But honestly, I feel like it could have hit even harder if they had some more scenes put in between this. And yes, I understand that there are plenty of scenes in Season 1 of them flirting and bonding. If they had a date or some scene between the invading of Zaun, I think it would have helped their relationship even more. Instead of these fucking music videos. And yeah, there are a lot more of these music videos in this season, and while they are cool and visibly appealing, they are taking away from what is supposed to be character and world building. It's a way to say, this is what they're doing, guys! Look how cool this is! There was a comment that said, Arcane answers the question of show or tell. It's imagine. You watch a music video and imagine a coherent plot. And they get very distracting after a while. And they continue to get worse later on. Moving on, a dynamic that is great to see in Act 1 is Echo and Jace meeting each other thanks to Heimerdinger. Seeing the smartest characters from both cities is endearing, and it builds nice banter between the two of them. This scene also shows how tired and stressed Jace is, which I love. Bro is just done with all this bullshit. And it's nice to have a back and forth between the scientific storyline and the more action-packed one in the Undercity. But anyway, let's talk about the Act 1 final battle. And yeah, it's fucking awesome. Ashes and Blood is a great tune, my favorite in the series, and the back and forth between the girls fighting and the guys going to some other dimension is made fantastically. and it ends in a way that led me and many others hungry for more. Despite the complaints I have with Act 1, it remains the best in the season because it truly is a continuation of what happened in Season 1. We see the aftermath of what happened in the finale, and many of the concepts are carried over from what was originally set up. But the issues grow as we continue to Act 2, where the problem is an uneven distribution of character arcs. So the end of Act 1 was rough for our characters. Vi and Caitlyn are going through a lot and already had a breakup. Jinx has a sister figure now. Mel is gone. Jason, Donger, and Echo traveled somewhere else. No one knows where the fuck they are. And the ones that are still here are having some interesting coping methods. One becomes Jesus, and the other is... well... Twitter went ballistic when this happened. Oh boy, was it a trip. So this episode is solely on Caitlyn and what she's been up to for the past, I think, 6 months? Since she's been a dictator. So we get to see that she's been accepting the manipulation of Ambessa, and has let her anger and frustration get the better of her. The Noxians have been taking over a little too much, and I love seeing it. Once again, it shows Caitlyn as a much more interesting character compared to how she was in Season 1, and it makes sense for her to feel like this, because she has given the Undercity enough chances, and they have not been taking it. Ambessa is seeking someone who can rule and be a representative for her gains, so she chooses someone who is emotionally weak and manipulates her into giving in. To me, it makes her just as intriguing as Silco, because if you remember Season 1, he does the same thing with Deckard. And I like that. I like that the antagonists in this show are cunning, and they actually have a lot of charisma behind them. However, it doesn't last forever, because now there's a big hulking experimental werewolf that is here to steal the show. And boy, does he steal the damn show. So I don't play League anymore. And even when I did, I was forced to with my friends. That being said, Warwick is one of my favorite champions, and Vander is my favorite character in the series. So seeing him in Season 2 is exciting, and also pretty disappointing. The show had been building up Warwick for a while now. He was hyped up way before the teasers, and there were even end credit clips. And the theories of Vander being him were prevalent, and not without merit. We finally see him unleashed, and it is brutal. The art and animation on display is a joy to see. It also gives a great arc for Jinx as a character as well, as we see more of her and Savika's dynamic. Isha is also here to give Jinx a sister figure to spend time with, and also motivate her to break out the other Zaun Knights out of jail. But then a wrench is thrown when we see the jungler recognize the ADC in the heat of a moment. Now this episode is really compelling when you look back on it. Caitlyn is now in the same position that Jinx was in Season 1. Jinx had a bad influence of Silco manipulating her and making her worse. Now Caitlyn has Ambessa doing the same thing to her. The flag might be different, but the methods are the same. Reznov. Jinx is slowly getting better while Caitlyn is getting worse. And focusing on this makes me really like this episode and these two characters even more. Then the episode ends with a new motivation for Jinx, to save Vander. Then in the next episode, we get Vi Ripley. And this is where the frustration comes in. So this fighting montage is really cool. And when I saw this clip before the show came out, myself and everyone else was fascinated by what was happening here, and how Vi got into this position. And it really sucks that this is all we see of this phase of Vi, and pretty much the extent of what we see with Lorisse. So some of you might be wondering why I keep bringing up Lorisse. And let me explain. This is something I've wanted to yell about for a while now. So the breakup hit Vi and Caitlyn hard, and both of them have similar but different ways to cope with it. Plane, shut the fuck up, I'm ranting! Both of them need something physical to get their minds off of what happened. For Caitlyn, it's sex. For Vi, it's fighting. Both of them have someone that entered their lives in this time to help them get through it. Maddie and Lorisse. Maddie gets in bed with Caitlyn and is constantly encouraging her to follow through with Ambessa's advice. and becomes a yes woman for Kate's decisions, and Kate accepts her in. Laurice is a true friend to Vi. He is there for her when she needs him, supports her in the fighting pits, and carries her home when she's drunk. But even then, Vi pushes him away. This is an expert way to show their destructive natures. Caitlyn has someone who is bad for her and accepts it, and Vi gets a friend who is good for her and rejects it. The problem is that in Vi's case, we don't get to see it. We get this montage, and then Laurice doesn't show up again until Act 3. And it's fucking maddening to me, because we got a whole episode focusing on Caitlyn with this, but with Vi, they skipped to her spending time with Jinx, which, don't get me wrong, is good, but there could have been so much more with Pit fighting Vi and her friendship with Laurice. For God's sake, they focus on this shot of him walking away when Caitlyn gets appointed as the dictator of Piltover. They were setting him up so much more, and I'm still not done. Look at him, and then look at Vander. Notice how they look similar? I can't be the only one that saw the symbolism here. There was clearly supposed to be more with this character, because everyone else gets a character like this. Even Jinx gets one with Isha. And all of them have problems with not getting enough time to shine, and just being plot devices that are immediately disposed of. But anyway, back to the fucking werewolf. So Warwick is on the prowl, and this brings Jinx and Vi together. And this dynamic between the two of them is good. Something that I think is commendable is that these two have a great sibling dynamic, and you can tell that the writers knew how siblings act with each other. When they're kids, they're inseparable. They love each other. When they first find each other, relieved and cling on to each other. And now they bicker and insult each other beyond belief. And even the way they wrestle is very similar to how siblings fight. I'm the youngest of 3. Trust me, I know. But we are getting back to a track that I like. Bringing Jinx and Vi back into each other's lives, but in a way that is reluctant cooperation, is interesting. And the hope of getting Vander back in some way keeps the interest alive. And we find Daddy, and he's not doing well. The final parts of this episode are by far the best in Act 2 for me. Because not only is the dynamic with Vi and Jinx entertaining, but it also brings more into the background of Vander, Silco, and now Felicia, Vi and Jinx's mom. And I like going back to this. Seeing the better days of the Undercity and the lost friendship of Vander and Silco really sells the tragedy. And Felicia gets added to the list of hot moms that have to tragically die. Why do they always do this, man? Come on. And I would be lying if I said that this scene didn't break me. The music, the animation, and the emotion was perfect. I love how there are conflicts in this show that are solved with more than just fighting. Wish that was the case in League. But then we get to Jace. And boy oh boy, has he been going through some shit, and it shows. This part caught me so off guard, I'm not gonna lie, but it was also really exciting for me because Jace was on a mission. It brings some great intrigue to his character, and it makes you wonder, what the hell did he see in the Hex Core? But once again, we get another issue. Like how Caitlyn becomes a more interesting character at the cost of Vi, Jace is continuing to get more intriguing with his story, but his girlfriend? Not so much. Mel was taken at the end of Act 1, and I was wondering what the deal with her was. Compared to who she was in Season 1, this honestly makes Mel a more bland character. She gets taken by this Black Rose thing, and is trapped in this hole the whole of Act 2. She gets tricked into thinking her brother is still alive, but he's not. It's just a Black Rose manipulating her, and then she awakens her power and goes Super Saiyan, and she just becomes a mage. And I really like Mel, and her interactions with Jace were great in Season 1, forming him into this political circle he was never meant to be in. Now, I still do like her. She has a great personality, she has a great sense of style, and there's just something that she just exudes many great features. Yeah. But what I appreciated about Mel is that she was an intriguing character that wasn't a champion in League. And that this show didn't have to rely on every character that was a champion to be exciting. Mel and Mbessa are now both champions in the game. And it feels like in Mel's case, they needed to give her these abilities to justify her being a playable companion. Sure, we still have characters like Silco and Savika, but one has its problems in Act 3 that we'll get to as well. Then we get to episode 6, which is the worst episode in the season. It's a convoluted mess that is rushing through too much. So I haven't mentioned Victor, but he is Jesus maxing and running his own cult Mechanicus. He is curing people in the Underdark and making this creepy-ass society. And while I like this concept, I feel like this should have been the back burner a little bit longer because it doesn't get the fleshing out it needs. And when we see it, it doesn't last long enough to convey that much emotion. But Vi and Jinx take Warwick there to get him cured, and this does lead to some more great interactions with them and Victor. Now, I'm sure you've noticed that I have highlighted the interactions with the characters a lot, and that's because I love the interactions. As a hobbyist writer myself, my favorite thing to write is dialogue and conversations. And when you have a character like Victor, who has lived in the Undercity like Vi and Jinx, but in a different perspective and circumstance, it gets engaging. However, it feels like the central conflict, the tale of two cities that rival each other, is getting dropped fast. Because as cool as it was to see Warwick, he has distracted from that plot. And now it's become a Monster Hunter Witcher mission to cure him. But we can't even focus on that, because the Noxus soldiers are marching through being dicks, and we gotta remind everyone that they are here now. And this is where so much shit happens at once. Ambessa sends Zangief to spy on the cult. Vi and Caitlyn reunite. Vi calls her Cupcake again, which causes her to just drop everything and betray Ambessa. A fight breaks out with Zangief, Caitlyn, and Jinx, with which Warwick kills him. Then Jace comes skulking around and blows up Victor, which causes all the people in the village to drop. Warwick goes crazy and starts rampaging, the Noxians attack, and then Isha blows herself up, with Warwick. Whoa, holy shit, slow the fuck down. Can we take a second to process anything? So much happens in this episode alone, it's sensory overload, and nothing can really take its time to breathe, or for the audience to digest what is happening. All the story beats are speed running, and we need to get things to where they need to be in Act 3, and prepare for the final battle. And that is where we get to the final big issue of this season, where we rush to the finish line. So we just had the worst episode in the season, but now we have the best episode in the season. Episode 9, we finally figure out what happened to Jace, Donger, and Echo, and we get a whole dedicated storyline between them. Echo and Donger were sent into a timeline where Hextech never existed, and Jace was sent to a timeline where it continues. And both of them are unsettling and compelling for different reasons. With Echo, it's him slowly realizing where he is and that this is a universe where he can be with the girl he loves and the friends that he lost. For Jace, it's realizing that all the work he went through with bringing Hextech into the world will be the end of it. He walks through the ruins of this Elden Ring-ass city and he sees the destruction that it caused. This episode had a better feeling compared to the others. It's paced incredibly well, and the back and forth between Echo in the best timeline and Jace in the worst one is beautifully crafted. But even in the best timeline, a price still had to be paid. And that was Vi. And most likely Jace and Caitlyn as well. Man, these characters cannot catch a break. But the character arc that Echo goes through here is superb. In the past, Echo always had the ideals that he needs to hit the problem where it is. Find it, destroy it. Very straightforward and simple. Even then, he struggled with it. We see that in his fight with Jinx in Season 1. He still hesitated to finish the job. But now, seeing what he could have had, and what could have been, it makes him realize that there is more than just hitting a problem to solve it. And goes back to what I liked in Act 2, and this show. It shows that conflicts can be solved from things other than fighting. And this scene needs no introduction. The dance that Echo has with Powder has already gone down in history as the best scene in the show. It's beautiful, touching, and filled with payoff. Then snapping back to reality, Jace gets the opposite message. After going through hell all alone and meeting the same mage he saw when he was a kid, he is now hellbent on one mission. He brought Hextech into this world, and now he has to take it out, including Victor. And this is why Jace has become such a fascinating character to me. He has good intentions. He truly cares about his friends and loved ones. But his emotions get the better of him. He's easily manipulated and falls victim to schemes by those more cunning than him. But he still soldiers on, wanting to correct what he did, no matter the cost. And in the end, he does. And I respect him for that. And at the same time, I respect Echo for having a glimpse of this world with almost no problems where he can live in, but he still goes back to his own timeline, because he knows he owes it to Vi and the others. But he's also content with the time he did spend with Powder. Look how happy he is that there is still a version of himself that will stay with her. Oh yeah, and Donger blew up, so this episode confirms that there are League characters that are just gonna start dying now. And this death really didn't hit me that hard. I never really cared for him in this season or the previous one. He also dodged all responsibility for what was going on in the Undercity, even though he also played a big part in it. And then he just blows up helping Echo. So, rip Bozo. So Act 3, pretty good start. Then we get to the second to last episode, which is... okay. I mean, it's alright. This episode is setting up for the finale, so it does its best to wrap up any loose ends it needs to. We get back to what happened after the Noxians attacked Warwick, and now Piltover is in preparation for full-scale war. And we need to get everything ready so we can wrap it up for the final episode. And watching this with that perspective, it makes a lot of sense for why everything happens the way it does. Doesn't mean I like it, it's just an explanation. So they have to get everything where it needs to be. So we have Jinx in jail, essentially turning herself in, and she's sad because Isha blew herself up. To be honest, I didn't feel anything when Isha died. Now, if you're going to accuse me of being a bitter man who hates children, well, you're not wrong, because I am the type of person that sends children to the mines in Frostpunk, and I laugh my ass off at shit like this. But that doesn't dispel the fact that Isha was a plot device, and she existed to do two things. Get in between Vi and Jinx during their fight, and then blow herself up to make her sad. Besides that, she is the cute sister figure that doesn't do anything. There was potential for her to represent a greater part of Zaun, where the Undercity is uniting, and it pushes Jinx to be the leader that Zaun thinks she is. But it doesn't work, because now that concept is long gone. It was leaving when Warwick came in, and now it's completely gone with Noxus trying to take over. Meanwhile, we have Caitlyn, who switched off Mbessa way too quickly for me, which is a shame, because while I have been saying that I like how Caitlyn descends in this season, her redemption is rushed, and it's almost non-existent. A friend of mine said it best, where Vi is seen as willing to put the uniform on for Caitlyn, but Caitlyn does not take her uniform off for Vi. Okay, well she does, but in a different way. Their relationship is very one-sided, at least in this season. And you could make the argument that Caitlyn went through the Undercity in Season 1, but it rarely comes into play in this season. With another 9 episodes to have this dynamic and slowly reel the two back into each other's lives, it could have worked a lot better. But it feels like they needed to get them together because that's what was set up in Season 1, and we gotta give the Yuri fans what they want. Which, good for them. Mel comes back to confront Mbessa, which returns to their dynamic, which has always been great. But it feels like now it's to foreshadow Noxus as the next region, which is cool, but it takes the focus away from the here and now, which I want it to be with Jace, because Mel and Jace have barely any interaction with each other. And then we have Mbessa utilizing Singed to revive Victor and raise a robot army, even sending a messenger to Jace to showcase how he is lost to the Arcane. But once again, this is an awesome concept, and it stays in line with what the original League lore is like. But I just wish they kept it in the back burner longer. Jesus Victor would have been a great reveal for Season 3, as we could have kept the focus of Season 2 on the civil war between the two cities, and the awakening of Warwick. Then, after that, we move on to settling disputes between each other to work together against Noxus. It would have given the characters more breathing room and built up more intrigue with the conflicts between characters like Vi, Jinx, Jace, and Victor. But the characters that work the best in this part are Echo and Jinx. Echo for the fact that he got a whole episode dedicated to him and how his life could have been. And it gives him the new motivation to save Jinx and convince her that she can still redeem herself, even after her sister failed to convince her. But it's also a great dynamic for Jinx as she has accepted herself as the monster and seeks to end the cycle. And it's sad to see, but now she understands what she thinks needs to happen. It's also really funny to see Echo reverse time to stop Jinx from flatlining herself. Bro is reloading quick saves to get the best ending. But this episode exists to set everything up for the final battle. Jace and Victor fight. Mel and Ambessa argue. Echo and Jinx reconcile. And Vi and Caitlyn fuck. And now we get to episode 9, which for the most part is a giant final battle, which would be fine in any other case. It's best compared with movies like Endgame or Deathly Hallows Part 2, where most of the finale exists as a big event where everyone we know comes back to fight off the bad guys, and it exists as a spectacle battle. And to not be negative for once, the battle is awesome. For one, we actually see the battle and the fighting going on and not just a fucking music video for once. So it makes me appreciate the animation and how different Noxus fights compared to Piltover. Piltover has a lot of modern steampunk tech, while Noxus is more crude but capable warriors. It makes the fighting stand out compared to the others. And Ambessa is an absolute menace on the battlefield. Bricky mentioned this in his video, but it's cool to see that everything in the show has some sort of weakness and can be countered in some way. The Noxians have these crystals that protect them from the magic, and it makes the fighters on all sides feel like they are on an even playing field. But we also get to see Victor's design, and I think it's cool. People mentioned that his face looks weird and disturbing, and that's the point. He is meant to look inhuman, like the Arcane is emerging from his body almost like a cocoon. But then we see Warwick is back again as this Arcane werewolf thing. And that really bothers me because it feels like they were just, well, we have Warwick, we might as well use him, so he's doing something, and we don't waste him. It just feels redundant at this point. He already got robbed of his time to shine. Just let the poor bastard rest, man. We also get the first money shot of the episode, with Jinx and Echo arriving as reinforcements for Piltover, because Noxus forgot. They had one advantage that they surely lacked. Zeppelins! And this is where we see that the Zonites were convinced to help fight with Piltover. Off screen! God fucking damn it! There's a lot of problems I have with this. So many characters were set up to have bigger plot points in development, and we see here that once again, they just had to skip through it to get to the final battle. Savika has not one spoken line in this act. She is such an interesting character too, because she is truly loyal. Not to Vander, not even to Silco, but to Zaun. And while I'm happy and agree that her getting a seat on the council as an ending is fitting, it did not have the execution it needed. Hell, even this Batboy guy that's part of Echo's gang got some lines. Hell, they even call attention to this chick who died. And they even call back to the fact that she's in the alternate universe that Echo visits. I've even seen people draw fan art of her. I have no idea what the fuck her name is. But it's not just the Zonites. The entirety of Caitlyn's Strike Force characters are all disposed of. Maddie is revealed to be a spy and gets domed by Mel. Loris gets shot. And you want to know the one guy in the Strike Force other than Caitlyn and Vi that lives? The green guy. Who doesn't say anything in the entire show. But back to the good stuff. The team up with Mel and Caitlyn versus Ambessa is a really cool fight scene. The tension is there because the choreography is fantastic and the movement of both of them is smooth. They do a great job at making Ambessa a palpable threat even against two people. And despite what I said before, Mel's magic is a delight to see. Also, just want to say, Vi and Jace team up multiple times and flop. Their girlfriends, on the other hand, team up once and win. Way to go, you two. But then the second money shot comes in with this beautifully illustrated scene of Victor, and the whole idea of the Hex Core transforming everyone into some sort of hive mind society. It's great, and I love the idea of the Hex Core being this entity. But also for the fact that Victor almost ends up winning. He is on the brink of bringing everyone to his heels, but then Echo comes in like a boss and ends up saving the day. And this scene is awesome. It's tense, it's fast, and it feels earned. It's not just a cheap come in at the last second. Echo struggles to get there, and when he does, it feels like he earned that victory. And it's a character that you don't expect it to be. This is a good subversion of expectations. And that's what allows Jace and Victor to come together and put an end to it once and for all, destroying Hex Core, and that includes themselves as well. And that's another aspect that I love about this show. In Season 1, I wasn't afraid that any of the champions were going to die because they're champions. They'll make it out. But with Season 2, there was a ton of known champions that died, and I'm glad that the writers aren't being bogged down by the canon of the game, so to speak. And they can use these characters how they want them. But finally, the war is over. Victor's invasion has ended, and now we can finally start repairing it. Oh fuck, the werewolf's back. So, they needed a conclusion to the sisters. And, well, yeah, it's fitting. But much like a lot in this season, there's not enough that builds up on this being a true payoff moment. It hit hard at the time, sure. But it doesn't have the same staying power. The animation and music are great, and the emotion between Vi and Jinx is palpable. But we just did not have the screen time. And honestly, that sums up Season 2 as a whole.
I am the dirt under your nails, Cupcake.
Vi, for fuck's sake, can you just say I love you like a normal person? So, at the end of the day, is Arcane Season 2 bad? No, but it is disappointing. Now, part of that can be because there was an astronomical amount of expectations and hype for Season 2. Season 1 was a surprise success, and it built so much for the universe and brought interest to the world. It reminds me of Spider-Verse. No one was expecting the first movie to be as good as it became, and it was universally loved by those who saw it. But then, Across the Spider-Verse had a lot more eyes on it, and with that, there was a lot more criticism than the first movie. But there is another Spider-Verse movie coming out, allegedly, so there's still a lot that can be built on what was set up in the last title. Now, there is still something new that's coming out of the League of Legends universe. We've already seen a glimpse of it with the Welcome to Noxus cinematic, so we're bound to get more shows in new regions. But for this story, in Piltover and Zaun, with these characters, that's it for most of them. M-Bessa, Jace, Victor, Warwick, Heimerdinger, Savika, Vi, Caitlyn, Echo, these characters are either dead or will not show up in future shows, because they are tied to their region. The only characters that have a chance to show up again is Mel, maybe Jinx, and maybe Singed. If you had a favorite character and you weren't happy with how they ended up, well, too fucking bad. You aren't seeing anything new with them anytime soon. Hell, when people talk about this season today, it's almost always about 2 episodes. Episode 7, it's the best written and the best paced out of the entire season, and is full of payoff at the end. And Episode 8, because of sex. So what now? I hope that with the future shows that they end up coming out with, if they're going to continue with the 2 seasons in each region, I hope they take account with the amount of time that they have to tell the stories. I hope they are able to pace the seasons better and try not to overextend and rush out the character development or concepts as they did in this show. And maybe sticking with fewer characters would be a better idea, so we don't have too many conflicting ideas with each other. But, like what Jay says, there is beauty in imperfection. And this show is beautiful. So I'm hopeful going forward, but this is going to be a tough one to revisit. Hey, how's it going? It's been a while. So, a lot of times I tell myself that I want to be more active on here and post more stuff, and then, well, a lot of stuff happens, and procrastination, and among a lot of other things, but we're back now, and that's what matters. So, we're gonna try to see if we can keep up the pace of staying more active, not just on here, but also on Instagram as well. We got some conventions that are coming up down the line as well. We got WonderCon and hopefully Game On that's going to be coming in as well. So if you guys are in the cosplay scene, then maybe I'll see you guys there as well. But we also got some fun streams and videos planned for the future, so I hope you guys will be joining in with me on that, as well as some collaborations that I have planned as well. But as usual, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video, which is going to be about a very important horror icon to me. And I hope you guys will join me for that. But until then, thank you guys for watching, and take care.